Dr. Munang, I want you to come in here. What is the perception, Africans out there, you are not in Cameroon, what perception do they have of their intelligentsia? And from our perspective in Cameroon, he's raising the issue of their capacity to solve problems. Do you see them solving the problems faced by their communities?
Dr. Dimachi and Apostle Ambe, I think we have laid the ground very well and put in perspective. But this is the dimension that I would like to bring to this conversation. And I will start off with this African proverb, which is that wisdom is like a baobab tree, and no one individual can embrace it. But what this means in this discussion is that the implication of the proverb is that intellectualism is unlimited. And I think Apostle Lambe and Dr. Ndimachi has already alluded to this. And it can be manifested any corner in Cameroon, in Africa, and globally. Let me just put it in perspective. Between 2002 to 2021, the highest number of patent holders in Cameroon were not Cameroonians. They were non-resident. And within that time, they had 872 patents. And Cameroonians were only having 30. Does it mean that Cameroon doesn't have intellectuals? No. When you look across the board, what you notice is that in every sector, in the country and abroad, a Cameroonian is there. As we're speaking today, the second best mathematician on earth is a Cameroonian. I'm sure that a lot of us didn't know that. He's a Cameroonian. But when you move to boardrooms, to different organizations, academic halls across the country, there are intelligentsias. And then when you take it down to the point that I'm trying to make, which comes to this aspect that trees are limitless when it comes to intellectualism, our mothers in communities who brought us up and have stable homes, in short, a stable country. Those are intelligentsias in their own right. The informal sector that is contributing 50% of Cameroon and creating 90% of the jobs in the country to stabilize the macroeconomic aspects of the country are intelligentsias in their own right. So overarchingly, when it comes to where have Cameroonian intellectuals helped to grow the country and across the entire African continent, every strata in which each and everyone is in is playing a role. And I think that all of us who are seated today in my media prime, this prime hour, actually intellectuals in our own right, and we cannot ignore to acknowledge the teachers that actually are teaching in primary school, over 100,000 teachers, because each and every year about 4 million kids are graduating into secondary school. And we are a product of that. And they are part of the intelligentsia that have contributed to nation building. And the second aspect that I think we need to look at, which is very, very key, is that the basic education level. I know that we always like to compare Cameroon to other countries in the continent, but when you look at published academic work, Cameroon is actually top tier. There is one journal that Cameroon, which is a Pan-African journal, that Cameroon have actually published 11 papers that are cutting edge, bringing not just Cameroon to the forefront, but also bringing a knowledge and presenting Cameroon as a brand. Countries that we usually compare economic growth with Cameroon have not even published up to 3 papers in that African journal. And the third aspect that I think is quite very, very important, it's when you look at the country today, the freak of Cameroon, and I know a lot of people sometimes try to downplay this, the freak of Cameroon is in the informal sector. Our mothers and brothers in community, going about their daily life, the buy and sell, the print skins, they contribute 50% to the gross domestic product of the country. The contribution to Cameroon's and studies, including the formulation of the National Program for the Development of Social Economy, contributed by Cameroonians in their own right, each level. And when you look at Cameroon's status globally, when it comes to climate change, for example, Cameroon have not only complied, but Cameroon has produced in the entire Central Africa region the most ambitious and at the same time also what is called climate action plans that they are already implementing. And it's been the result of Cameroonians doing this. So when you look at it from that perspective, there are intellectuals in Cameroon that are doing quite a lot. Now when it comes to technology, the entire African continent, you know that the cardio part, which is actually an innovation by a Cameroonian to determine when there can be failure, not enough to be treated. A Cameroonian did this, and actually a young person. And there is a Cameroonian who actually developed what is called calibrating radars for self-driving cars. So Cameroon is taking center stage with culture, media, science, actually bringing a lot of aspects. And just to conclude in this opening chapeau is that we cannot forget those in the diaspora, whether they are doing blue-collar jobs or white-collar jobs. And every year, they contribute remittances that are contributing to 1% of budget for the country and helping our brothers and sisters to start their businesses. The contribution in 2022 was 380 million US dollars to the Cameroon economy by those who are. And therefore, what they do, using ability, intellectual capacity to contribute to the country is also part of the intellectualism that we cannot be able to ignore. Actually, what we should not miss in this discussion is that intellectualism is about usefulness.
Okay, it's about youthfulness. Dr. Muna, out there, let's look at the field of our research. We have had challenges in Cameroon, in Africa. How well have our scientists or our researchers done to tell us either telling us beforehand how to handle specific situations that befall us, or even in the course of happenings like COVID and a host of others? How do they help to turn things around?
Yeah, thanks again, Mr. Luo. I think before I answer your question, let me put in perspective what Pastor Lambe and Dr. Ndimacho have beautifully articulated. And I think what's coming out there is that intellectualism is not a preserve for a certain group of people or for the few, but it is about usefulness and it's about value. And because of that, regardless of whether you are a researcher or not, and you are not offering value in what you are doing, then definitely you are not an intellectual. And I think this is a very important point, because our mothers who raised us use innovative ways. Even when they didn't have a budget, they didn't have money, they will find a way to improvise so that we can be able to have food on the table. Now, when you look at that from that perspective, I think it boils down to one word: mindset. And this mindset then gets into your question, which is African scientists start it so it work or build on what is working, then fill the gaps. And because of the mindset of never believing that even what works when we are able to put effort, we are always chasing the wind. Because of that, the excellent work that is done in the continent by African scientists, by African anthropologists, by historians, sometimes never make that center stage because we do not believe in it. That's the first point. The second point is that once we fine-tune, actually format our minds to think that we are unable to do it, makes us not to believe in ourselves, and then what we produce get carried away. And across the continent today, there are two kinds of success stories and excellent examples of innovations. But those innovations actually do not make center stage or headline for quite a very long time. Why? Because a lot of people do what I call an experimental vision, which is quite very simple. Bring that which fits into someone else's vision, not our own as a continent. And therefore, we need to develop what I call an unborrowed vision, which is to be able to utilize what is available to our people and solve the problems that are peculiar, problems of food insecurity, problems of water shortage, problems of ensuring that we can value what we produce using local textual solutions that are fit for purpose. Unless we do that, even what we do at the end of the day, the researchers publishing might not be able to find center stage because our people may not be able to embrace it. The last part is that the brain of a human being is the laziest part in the human being. And the brain, because it's the laziest part, fed in with information that have to do with ease, then the information stays there. Because the brain plays what is called avoidance of yes. And when you fit in the brain with I am poor, growing up hearing I am poor, it will remain in your mind. It's what the brain remembers. Anything that is of ease the brain remembers. Anything that is out of adversity that doesn't necessarily remember. And that is why when we talk about ease, complaining, okay, that's into our minds very easily. So what I want to say here is that excellence is the result of adversity, and adversity needs resilience. With being resilient, we might not be able to overcome the challenges that we face. And therefore, adversity is not a big thing. It's in adversity that innovations are born. And therefore, when we focus on talking challenges rather than talking solutions to those challenges, we end up filling the mind with the easy thinking and then end up not having the solutions. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say here is that we need a mindset reset. To use Dr. Ndimacho's word, we need a rethinking and a reimagination. How we can leverage what works, build on it, so that it can be able to benefit society. And that's the essence of intellectualism, which, as I said earlier, it's about being useful, offering value to society in our different spheres and domains.
How much is this true, Dr. Richard Munang, when Dr. Wesley says it's difficult for you guys out there to contribute because the government does not recognize its citizens? Is Dr. Wesley talking about dual nationality here, the issue of dual nationality?
I think for the case of Cameroon, dual nationality is, it doesn't have any law in place to accept dual nationality, but I think that there are Cameroonians in their own right who are contributing to the development of the country. It's not only through government that you can contribute. There are youth initiatives which have been privileged also to engage with leveraging on what is called innovative volunteerism. And we are seeing them turning agricultural waste into fuel briquettes, into biogas, and creating their businesses. So to some have said that government is a kind of a hindrance to supporting the country and driving development, to me, I think is a misnomer. Let me go back to this point that Dr. Ndimacho has mentioned, especially on the point of service, selflessly applying service. If one is not selfless, regardless of whether the enabling environment is there or not, you will still not be able to contribute to your community. Because the first thing is what to be useful for, because the purpose of life is to be useful. And the usefulness should be to solve problems, to turn challenges into opportunities, and not only complaining. And there is always an excuse. There are always going to be challenges. But what we must always do is to look what is happening, that we can be able to contribute our own quota using not only our knowledge, but also the opportunities that we have. It is about giving new knowledge, like my media prime, this prime hour is doing. Give the new knowledge, and the willing are going to pick up that new knowledge. If it is about inspiring a young person to see his or herself as capable to do something, let's do that. But when we see sometimes and about how the government is not working, how civil society is not working, how the intellectuals and lecturers are not playing their part, the question should be, what as an individual doing? And am I playing my part before I agree with another person? I think until we come to that level of actually answering the question, what am I useful for in terms of my own contribution to my own country and continent, then take stock of what each and every one have done, when we are going to be behind, because even if all the enabling policies are in place and citizens are not willing to tap into those policies, then there is going to be no development. I think that one aspect that is very key that was also mentioned, Dr. Ndimacho mentioned about food. Yes, food is important, but at the same time, that is also where opportunities are. I've said this so many times in the show that Africa import unemployment and export employment, spending over $48 billion that could be used to actually into other socio-economic transformational development sectors. It uses that to import food that is worth 48, but at the same time also endure post-harvest losses that are worth $48 billion. So the point should be, let's look at what the young people are doing in their own right in communities and support them to close the gap so that at least there can be progress. Politics is a conduit that it's supposed to be leveraged to propagate policy, which is the biggest driver of change to drive transformational development. It is a vehicle using their own ingenuity. Until we start to appreciate one another and leverage on what each and everyone is doing, from that youth in the community to the PhD, to the medical doctor, to the engineer, to the social scientist, idea matters. Then that is when we can be able to make transformational progress. But sitting and complaining and blaming everyone only retrogress and doesn't inspire. Let's to inspire one another, knowing that it is in adversity that challenges can be turned into opportunities. Over.
Thank you very much. We're now to come in to discuss about this world creation, a perspective by Africans who have received knowledge on wealth creation. I'm talking about economy. How do we explain that he says that the Lebanese and the rest who are thriving in Cameroon is because opportunities have been given them, and that Cameroonians who read marketing, economics, and the rest cannot create wealth because the opportunities are non-existent?
I think that was a very good point that Pastor Lambe brought up, because the reason why Africa is behind is because we have forgotten that what we are looking and searching for is actually just where we are.
Of course.
Wealth creation is no rocket science. It's about leveraging what you have and expanding it so that at least it can be in a finished form for you to fetch money. But it is also about looking for challenges to solve so that at least you can make money. Let me take the agro value chain. Our mothers produce enough food in Cameroon. But the amount of food that is wasted because they don't have storage systems, whether it is a solar fridge or a solar dryer to add value to it, it is the gap, because then the food gets wasted and they still end up not having food. If you intervene to add value, not learning a skill to develop a solar dryer or learning a skill to assemble a solar fridge, you will be closing a gap, because you will have a market for that mother to be able to access. Mother will then dry her vegetables, dry her tomatoes, dry her cassava, turn the cassava flour, and be able to fetch more money. Wealth creation is a chain reaction where everyone intervenes, where he or she have his or her expertise to then be able to solve a problem, put money in his or her pocket, and at the same time also put food on the table. Unless we start to understand that it is in simple things that we need to do, that we can then be able to move to higher levels, then we'll be missing the point. Because by crawling, we learn to stand. And there is an African proverb that says, we must learn to lift stones today before we can be able to lift mountains. And I think there is this attitude in the continent that we must rise tomorrow because the world is ending tomorrow. We must rise today because the world is ending tomorrow. No, it's a process. I started by saying that excellence is not an event, it's a habit. It is through overcoming adversity, which is where we have to endure some pain before we can ever have gain. Because no pain, no pain. We want to sit and think that others will not come and take away what we are not doing. We're joking. If you do not solve your problem, that will become an opportunity for someone else. I want to end by saying this. Opportunities are not given anywhere in the world. Studied in the Western world, worked there. I'm now working back in the African continent. The fact that we see the Western world, things look as if they are just very easily moving. There are also people there who are struggling to get opportunities. But the difference is the systems work where everybody works. If you go against this, you are going to be punished. Why am I bringing this up? If opportunities are given to people who are not willing to seize them, nothing will change. And this is a very discussion sometimes, because when we say it, it's because we are here and there. That's why we are saying it. Even if you are promoted today and you do not deliver with expectation, you're going to lose wherever you are. And I always say that it's very easy to climb, but it's very difficult to stay at the top. If you are not dedicated, if you are not focused, if you do not want to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. And therefore, when it comes to wealth creation, it is up to Cameroonians and Africans to start to learn a skill. So it boils down to these two words, skills retooling. Whether we study to be a teacher, learn how to be able to add value to an agricultural product that you are interested in. It's about passion, to follow your passion. Being a teacher or being a technologist, being an entrepreneur does not stop you from actually focusing on a problem that you can be able to give your best. It's difficult to make impact in something when there is no passion. If you have passion for anything or without money, and I call passion the biggest currency of now. Money.
I dropped that message for a reason.
Do not have passion, they will squander the money and no development will happen. But give ideas. A passionate young person, so we use those ideas to innovate and come up with solutions that will make him or her a billionaire. This is the kind of articulation that I think really needs to be driven every person's mind, young or old, young at heart, country and in the continent. Call these the biggest teachers that Africa needs today, which is inspiration. So, I think Africans to usher themselves to the solution space. And here's the last aspect here, which is one that I think we cannot discuss intellectualism, wealth creation, without also mentioning. A degree is not a license to a job. Because the jobs that are out there are not necessarily jobs in which we were trained, especially with our educational curriculum system to address. Remember, education in Africa is matched with the challenges that the continent faces today. Therefore, if you want to get into agriculture, for example, you have to start to learn that skill on your own. If you want to get into going to turning waste into apparel, into shoes, and into plastic bags, you have to learn that skill on your own. This means? It means that with that extra ingenuity, what I call internal rejuvenation, we need to rejuvenate and have to do something that I'm passionate about and start to learn that skill. But unless we do that and think that it's only when we're going to have a white-collar job that we can be able to be better, no, that is not going to work. Even me today, I'm an environmental scientist, but my passion in mentoring and engaging with young people. It is true that at least you bring the skills from the work that you are doing, you notice that you're actually driving a different dimension that is making impact. If each and every one of us can do that, we'll be able to contribute to transformational development for the country. That aspect of fearing failure is something that every person, young or old, should know that it is in failure that we learn. Not today, even if you don't have money. Fail, you learn from failure. Because when you fail forward, you grow from it and you become stronger and better. We're afraid of failure because we constrain ourselves to what society will think about us if we fail. And you have experience, because experience is not taught in the classroom. It's when you try and voluntarily volunteer yourself to do something, because it is part of gaining skills from volunteering that you can then be able to be marketable in creating opportunities for your own self. And that's how world can be created.